All right, welcome to part 4 of our walk through A Cartoonist's Guide to the Gospel of Mark. In our last video, we were looking at, we're still here in part 1 of the Gospel of Mark, and last time we were looking at chapters 4, 1 through 34, the parables that we find in Mark. And this time we're going to look at the next page, which begins in chapter 4, verse 35. And it says that Jesus, when evening had come, he said to them, "Let's go across to the other side." Now remember, they've been in Capernaum. And let me come down here. I want to give you a map. So here's the Sea of Galilee. And up here on the northwestern shore is the Sea of Capernaum. And they want to go over to the country of the Gerasenes. But in between Capernaum and landing on the shore of the Gerasenes, they meet this big storm. So this puts it into geographical context. So let's come down here to the PowerPoint and just walk through the story. So in verse 35, on that day when evening had come, he said to them, "Let's go across to the other side." And leaving the crowd behind, they took with him them in the boat just as he was. Other boats were with them. A great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat, so that the boat was already being swamped. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushions. And they woke him up and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we're perishing?" And he woke up and he rebuked the wind and said to it, "Peace, be still." Then the wind ceased, and there was a dead calm. And he said to them, "Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith?" And they were filled with great awe and said to one another, "Who is this that even the winds and the waves obey him?" So now we come to chapter 5. Verse 1. When they came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gerasenes, and when he had stepped out of the boat, immediately a man of the tombs with an unclean spirit met him. He lived among the tombs, and no one could restrain him anymore, even with a chain, for he had often been restrained with shackles and chains. But the chains he wrenched apart, and the shackles he broke in pieces, and no one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains he was always howling and bruising himself with stones. And when he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and bowed down before him, and he shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God, do not torment me." For he had said to him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" He replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." He begged him earnestly not to send them out of the country. Now there was on the hillside a great herd of swine was feeding, and the unclean spirit begged him, "Send us into the swine, let us enter them." So he gave them permission, and the unclean spirits came out and entered the swine, and the herd, numbering about 2,000, rushing down the steep bank into the sea, and were drowned in the sea. The swineherds ran off and told it in the city and in the country, and then the people came to see what it was that had happened. They came to Jesus and saw the demoniac sitting there, clothed and in his right mind, the very man who had the legion, and they were afraid. Those who had seen what had happened to the demoniac and to the swine reported it. Then they began to beg Jesus to leave their neighborhood. As he was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed by demons begged him that he might be with them. But Jesus refused and said to him, "Go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and what mercy he has shown you." And he went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. And everyone was amazed. This is an incredible story. This story is filled with so many layers of symbolism. The demon is named Legion, for there's many inside of this poor guy. But here's the thing about the term legion. Legion is a term used to describe a group of 1,000 Roman soldiers. So it's hard to believe that this was not a direct political statement on the part of Mark. The legion asks to be thrown into the pigs, a herd of unclean animals according to Jewish custom. And these animals are thrown into the very sea that Jesus had just calmed. Do you remember another time when God allowed an imperial army to be drowned in the sea that God had just mastered? Hint, hint, it's Exodus. And many scholars wonder if the Gospel of Mark is not making a political statement here to show that Jesus has power over the Romans, and it's all done kind of in code. So that's a really fascinating theory. I also want to go back to this calming of the sea. It's important to remember that in the ancient world, the people saw the sea as chaos, right? The sea is so unpredictable, and storms would kick up in the Sea of Galilee all the time. And so as Jesus is calming the storm, he is showing that he also has power over the gods of chaos. And so little by little, Mark is showing us that Jesus is establishing his authority. He has the power to heal the sick, to forgive sins, to cast out demons, and to calm the storms of chaos. And in the story of the pigs, maybe even has the power to throw the Roman legion into the sea. That's a great story, and we will see you next time for part 5.